Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our town hall today. I'm Justin Pizzere with ABC15. We have Josh, who is one of our digital producers. We are also joined by Thomas Barr from Local First Arizona. If you want to wave hi, Thomas. That's Thomas down there. And then we have Steve Chukri, the president of the Arizona Restaurant Association, who is also joining us today. So one of the big things we're talking about that everybody has questions on, restaurants. Is it safe to go back in? What do some of these restaurant owners do with how they're struggling and everything? So we're hoping to get you guys some answers. So if you do have questions, just go ahead and put those questions in those live comments. We're going to see them scrolling. So we will try our best to get to your question if you have one. So I'll start with Steve, though. What is one of the big questions that you're getting right now from some of these restaurant owners, these small business owners?
Well, you touched on it, Justin. Is it safe to go back to a restaurant? And the answer is yes, it is safe to go back to a restaurant. What we're witnessing is as much of what we expected in the guidelines that we set forth in tandem with Governor Ducey's guidelines and the CDC, and that is that we just keep utmost quality in our hygiene, as well as how we're serving our guests in this new world post-COVID-19. So what you're seeing is masks being worn in the back of the house, in front of the house in most cases. You're not seeing any items on tables such as salt and pepper shakers or Cholula sauce. You're seeing most of the time disposable menus or a strict protocol in wiping down menus after every use, and distancing between tables. You're not sitting close to someone. You're sitting at a proper appropriate distance apart as you're dining inside a dining room of a restaurant. So far we've been very pleased with what we've seen.
We had a question from Melissa, and she said, is it mandatory for restaurant employees to wear a mask throughout Arizona, or was that merely a suggestion? Steve?
Great question. And yes, it was more than just a suggestion. We put these guidelines out, leaving it as an option, Justin. However, we strongly recommend that masks being worn, especially in the back of the house. In the front of the house, in the dining rooms, it's optional. And quite frankly, we've had some restaurateurs get positive comments for not using masks in the dining room from guests. So it's always going to be a mixed bag. We can appreciate that, varying opinions on what some believe to be safe and others. But for the most part, we've seen it present in not only the kitchen, but also in the dining room.
One of the questions that I wanted to ask you, Steve, just bouncing off of that, is how much of these regulations or these suggestions are new? Obviously, there's a food code that restaurants have to follow, or cleaning and keeping food at hot temperatures. How much of this is new that restaurants have to now make these changes?
Well, a lot of it is new, Josh, and that's an obvious good question. That hygiene is always job one, right, in any restaurant, because it has to be. We have to protect our customers and the public health. So the hygiene has always been a top priority. This new set of circumstances and guidelines set forth in recent weeks as restaurant dining rooms started to reopen is mostly new. Of course, we would wipe down menus and we would have rigorous protocols, but not to this standard. And so some restaurateurs are even taking it a step above what they've been expected to do, and making sure that they wipe down handles every hour or every 30 minutes, which is not something that was typical of the hygiene code prior to COVID-19 in restaurants.
Thomas, I wanted to ask you, you deal with a lot of these small businesses. Obviously, they're reopening. They've already gone without income, and now they're having to open with a whole lot of regulations, plexiglass and all of that. What are you hearing from some of these business owners now?
Yeah, so there's a wide variety of different types of businesses out there, right? We have fast service restaurants, we have cafes, coffee shops, fine dining restaurants. They're all designed differently. They all have different numbers of staff working and operate in different areas of the state. And so they're all having to deal with lots of different types of things in order to reopen. And some of them are taking precautions further than others are, as that is their choice. And so there's a lot of things that they're going to need to have, and a lot of things they're considering for those that haven't started to reopen. You think about all the costs that come along with having more hand sanitizer available, not only for your own staff, but for all the customers that are coming in. We've seen businesses like Huss Brewery. They've invested in purchasing, printed materials that you can put on the ground that show that you're social distancing away from other customers in the brewery at the same time. If businesses want to purchase plexiglass to have as dividers when you go to purchase your coffee or your items at the counter, there's lots of different things that it's going to take for the businesses to invest in order to open. And then they're also thinking through and considering the roles of the staff and how they operate within a business. Your traditional barista that would, handle cash and credit cards might not be the same person moving forward that also makes the drinks. That might be two different positions. So there's a lot of different scenarios and a lot of different things that businesses are having to consider in order to safely and effectively reopen for the public.
So I guess going off of that, what do you think? What is the future of restaurants here? Obviously those are going to require a lot of different causes going forward. What does that look like?
Yeah, I think that's the unknown, because the very, scary thing that we need to remember in Arizona, especially in our urban areas, is that we're entering the Arizona summer. The last 2 months would have been the time that restaurants see a surge in revenue and sales that helps them get through the Arizona summer, which we tend to see, lower tourists, people actually leaving town and visiting other places that are cooler. While our northern Arizona cities and towns actually do see a surge in tourism, Maricopa County and the Tucson area do see a dip in revenue. So a lot of these small restaurants, a lot of these family-owned restaurants are going to struggle getting through the summer. And that's the reality that we have to face. So I think it's really important that we as consumers and we as people in the community think about that and try to support these businesses as much as possible, as a lot of them are continuing to offer to go and carry out services that we can continue to support, even if we're not going to visit them in person.
We did get a question from Alex Wobster, and he said, how are regulations being enforced? And I know a lot of people have been asking, who's regulating this? Is somebody going by and checking if these people are wearing masks, if there are social distancing things on the floor? I don't know if you can speak to that, Steve, but there's a lot of people that want to know, how is this being enforced?
Well, I've heard everything from, obviously, county health inspectors still going in and doing their inspections as they usually would and paying attention to some of these other items. In addition to that, I've actually heard of cases where police officers of a respective city would go in and just take a look and check in with restaurateurs. It has not been widespread. But I will also tell you that there's a lot of self-regulation going on. As you may have heard recently in the media in the past few weeks, 2 restaurants who tangentially had a COVID-related response, meaning an employee that came in contact with someone that had COVID-19, or someone that it was twice removed had COVID-19, voluntarily shut their doors. I received a phone call just a few Sundays ago from one of them at 8 o'clock in the morning saying, "Hey, I'm doing this. Is this the right thing to do?" And I really applauded his efforts. So we have a lot to lose if someone gets sick in a restaurant. And I think you're going to see self-enforcement more than.
How many restaurants do you foresee closing in Arizona? I know we've already seen some of our big ones close. Do you have a number how many have closed already or will close?
Well, sadly, we estimate right now about 8 to 9% of Arizona restaurants have closed and will remain closed. And we unfortunately expect that number to grow into the double digits. This was the final straw that broke the camel's back for many establishments that weren't doing so well. And they took this to mean that, you know what, now's the time to exit the stage gracefully and maybe try a new venture or try something else. Even some of the most successful restaurateurs in our state have had to close a restaurant at some point. So we're hopeful that number doesn't creep too high, but it's an unfortunate reality that has been an outcome or an outgrowth of COVID-19.
You said double digits. Are we talking 10%, 20%?
Yeah, we're
15?
talking possibly close to 20%. And I think that number will become more real in the coming weeks. as Thomas alluded in some of his comments, we as restaurants start to reopen, we've got some that are just now starting to reopen. I got a text late last night saying, "Hey, we opened 3 of our stores." So it's not full bore yet, and it's going to take some time. And some restaurants have decided to close over the summer. So that final number we won't know really probably till late fall, but we'll have a better indication, I think, by midsummer.
What
So you said 20%? Sorry, Josh, but 20% of the restaurants in Arizona closing and will stay closed.
That is unfortunately what we're starting to see and estimate.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Sorry, Josh.
No, you're good, Justin. What type of economic impact, I mean, does that have on Arizona if that many restaurants close? I mean, those are jobs, that's food, those are businesses.
Well, Josh,
Maybe you also have delivery people, food suppliers
right.
and everything.
That's right. And there is a huge ripple effect. And I can answer that question in 2 ways. Josh, first and foremost, you're right. We are an economy in Arizona. Many folks don't realize this. Last year, restaurant sales just in Arizona were 13.4 billion. Last year, nationally, restaurant sales were just under 900 billion. We're almost $1 trillion industry to America. And so we got our numbers just a week ago. In April, restaurant sales losses were 815 million just for the month. Thomas spoke about that. This was our peak season. It couldn't have come at a worse time. So we estimate right now we're losing over $27 million a day in restaurant sales.
Thomas, I don't know if you can talk to, I mean, what are some of the options for some of these small business owners? I mean, are there, obviously the federal government has grants or they've had the CARES Act, or the equivalent of it for these business owners. What is there anything else out there for these people to kind of help them bridge this gap?
Yeah, it really is going to depend on where the restaurant is located in Arizona. For example, right now the city of Phoenix approved $6 million of funding that they got through the CARES Act to release into small business loans, and some of those, or I'm sorry, small business grants, not loans. And some of those dollars are actually allocated specifically for restarting restaurants. So if you're in the limits of the city of Phoenix, you can apply for that grant. The city of Mesa had a similar grant program available for small businesses. But more than financial assistance, there's also things that we need and that we're seeing from cities that they're doing in order to help businesses. As you could imagine, as I alluded to earlier, there's a lot of small businesses that just don't have a lot of space. If you think about some of your favorite, small restaurants out there, they've got small kitchens and small dining rooms. So what some cities are doing is they're actually expanding and putting ordinances through allowing businesses to expand into right-of-way areas, sidewalks, parking spaces, things like that, so that they can spread out their tables and have more space to serve more customers at a safe distance. Downtown Mesa has done it. The city of Tempe actually introduced it just today. They announced it. So businesses can actually apply for a special permit in order to serve food outside of their regular premises. This is the type of innovation we need. We have to be looking for solutions and working on solutions as a community from every perspective in order to help the businesses get assistance that they need. Additionally, at Local First Arizona, we're just offering as much technical assistance as needed to all of these businesses. It's hard to navigate all of these different situations and grants and applications while you're thinking about hiring back staff and considering everything that you have to deal with as an entrepreneur. So we're reaching out to businesses, offering resources as much as possible, just like the Restaurant Association is. It's a whole community effort. We need as much help as possible for these businesses.
One of the things that we saw, obviously, this weekend, I know we touched on it a little bit earlier, but was over at like those nightclubs in Scottsdale. Obviously, people want to go outside. They want to get out and about. They want to hang out with people, but you have to do that safely. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily look as spaced out as it is. And so obviously we've seen the mayor of Scottsdale come out yesterday with his statement, or 2 days ago. Do you have a reaction to that? Is there is it how do you fix that? How do you change that? Can you? Is it limited? Steve or Thomas, whoever feels comfortable answering it.
I will tell you that it's difficult in our industry. Thomas said it well, that we're talking about entrepreneurs. restaurateurs are some of the most entrepreneurial, innovative people I've ever come to know in my 18 years of being allowed to run this association. But however, with opportunity comes responsibility, Josh. And that's what we have said to our members, especially bar owners, to say, look, we understand you're at a deficit because of the construct and layout of your establishment. However, we have to be very mindful. And what I've tried to convey to them is if you want to open your doors and have people sit in a booth, and many of you know, today bars look more like restaurants than they ever have before. So if you want to offer food and do the type of things a restaurant would do, we applaud you, we support you. However, if you're playing loud music, people are standing and drinking, people are dancing, people are in close proximity to each other, that's not allowed, and you're jeopardizing your liquor license, number one. And number two, you could be cited for that. So people have to use caution. And I understand what happened in Scottsdale. I know what Mayor Lane went through. And it's not an easy situation. It's a very difficult one, but people have to have that personal responsibility or else there will be consequences, sadly.
Steve, the governor came out in one of his press conferences and he basically said, don't play with it. And he threatened, you'll lose your liquor license. Do you know, have any of establishments in Arizona, have they had their liquor license pulled?
Not to my knowledge, Justin, they haven't yet. I had a conversation last week with the Department of Liquor, and we are in constant communication that if some issues are arising, we want to help them deal with it. We want to make sure we're educating folks. But the education is only going to go so far. If there are bad actors out there, they run a very big risk of hurting their establishment in the long run. And so we can't underscore that enough to make sure that they're abiding by what's set out in phase one. And as soon as we get to phase two, hopefully we will be able to relax some of the regulations.
Kelly Brenner Simon did comment earlier. She said, will we ever hear from the governor again? Kelly, the answer is yes. He actually has a press conference scheduled for today. It's scheduled for today, so hopefully that's going to happen. So hopefully we're going to hear some more, news from him about some of the plan on reopening Arizona, what that's going to look like. One of the things, Steve, that I wanted to touch on as well, there's a lot of people that are unemployed. In some cases, they're making more now than they were working in a restaurant. And some of the restaurant owners that we have talked to said, you know what, I'm having a really hard time getting these employees to come back to work now because they're making more on unemployment. What is that employer supposed to do?
It's tough. First and foremost, Local First has been giving out grants. We're giving out grants to furloughed workers. Keep in mind that we've displaced 65% of our workforce. We have 230,000 people employed just in restaurants. That's not our suppliers. That's not the ripple effect or the chain effect of who supplies restaurants with resources. It's solely workers in restaurants. So we've displaced thousands of people, unfortunately, because of this pandemic. That being said, the governor of Arizona, Governor Ducey, has acted in supporting with unemployment benefits, as has the federal government. But Justin, we're seeing on a national basis, this just isn't an Arizona problem. This is a big problem nationally. And we have spoken to Congress. We have spoken to our leaders here in Arizona to say, if we offer someone a job back and they are not ill or they're not caring for someone that's ill, we need them to come back. They can't simply just take unemployment and be okay with that. They're understanding that. What we'd like to see and what we're pushing for is if you're offered your job back and you deny it, then your benefits should stop. Other folks are starting to come around. What I mean by that is other employees are saying, look, we want to make sure we have a good job when our unemployment runs out. So we understand we may be making more now, but we need to go back. We need to get back into our jobs. And one last point on this, the dining public, whether it's to go or now dine-in service, have been incredibly generous with tips. So in some ways, it's a misnomer to suggest or think they're not going to make more money because we have seen tips up to 30% on average in restaurants taking place right now. So we encourage people to get back to work. We need you. We want you. And I think you'll be happier working in your restaurant and your job than just sitting at home on the couch.
Are some of these employers, are they reporting this stuff to the state? If an employee does not want to come back to work, they can report it to the state.
They can. I mean, there's no mechanism yet to say that, okay, that unemployment will be shut off. They're telling us, we're getting calls about it, saying, what do we do? and they are reporting it to DES. But right now, Justin, there is no mechanism to actually sever those unemployment benefits.
Teresa Polito had a comment. She had a question, and is contact tracing occurring when an employee tests positive? Do you know if that's happening, Steve?
Well, kind of wearing my elected hat as a Maricopa County supervisor, I can answer that as yes. We are seeing contact tracing happen. I applaud my colleagues and the staff of Maricopa County for doing it very responsibly, and just letting people know and voluntarily offering up phone numbers and the like to make sure we do this. And it's about personal responsibility, Justin. This isn't Big Brother trying to get into your backyard and find out what you're doing and monitor every step. It's about being responsible as fellow Arizonans. And so Maricopa County has done an excellent job, and we've been very successful with our contact tracing, and of course, working with the 14 other counties as well as the state government.
One thing I wanted to ask was earlier we were talking about the different ways that restaurants are becoming innovative, trying to stay in business, right? Transferring to takeout, transferring to carry out. And one of those things that we saw was this idea that alcohol could be served as a to-go mechanism, right? Sometimes they were, handcrafted cocktails and they had a lid and the straw was, taped to the side. Do you see that continuing? And if so, I mean, how? Obviously, we'd have to do that, safely, so people aren't, drinking and driving. But it has been, I think when we were talking earlier, it's been a benefit to restaurants to bring in additional revenue.
It's been a huge boost. It's been an absolute huge boost. We pushed for it. I believe Local First pushed for it. Others pushed for this with the governor to say we need something here to complement our repertoire, if you want to call it that, of dining options for to-go ordering. But it has to be done so responsibly. And there's been a couple of hiccups with it, to be candid. I was just on a call a few days ago, and we're getting some groups together and some stakeholders together to say, what does this look like going forward? We have asked the Ducey administration to carry this forward for the rest of 2020, Josh, and we believe they will do that. But we also have to be mindful of some of the licenses that allow for this now that are very expensive to have, whereas other licensees who didn't pay as much also will now reap that benefit. So we have to make sure we're being fair when it comes to who's allowed to do it. And it may come about that we have a new license that allows for this in the future, but it's wildly popular, not only for the restaurant community, but for our customers. And I believe we'll be discussing this in the next legislative session on how we can still do this responsibly, of course, complying with laws and not letting it get into the hands of underage kids, but also making sure we're being fair to those licensees out there as well.
I know we focused on restaurants a lot, and one of the areas that was like just bars. And let's talk about like specific bars, not bars that necessarily also have a kitchen and serve food, but bars that just serve like premium cocktails. We've got those around the valley. Do you have any guidance on where they're at? It seemed to be a little bit of a gray area of whether or not they could open or not open under the current guidelines. Have you heard?
Yeah, what we have seen first is that these bars have moved only to takeout in some cases. That keep in mind, Josh, that when this first occurred roughly 8 weeks or so ago, now probably going on 10 weeks, that these bars just decided to shut down, right? Because there's nothing they could really do. They're not equipped to do to-go ordering. So during this downturn, if you will, of having to be closed, they came up with a policy and guidelines and a construct by which they could open for takeout only. And we're seeing bars do that, especially just when we first announced a few weeks ago that restaurants could reopen their dining rooms. And now I believe you're seeing them open even further by having guests come in hopes that phase 2 will allow them to reopen completely. So we've seen a lot pivot to takeout, but not as many open as of today.
Thomas, I guess I want to touch on again. So if you are a small business owner, if you're a restaurant owner here in Arizona, and you do need help besides what the federal government has offered, what should they do? What resources are out there for them?
Yeah, there's a lot of resources, and I just say at first that we can be one for them. So at Local First Arizona, we're offering consulting services, technical assistance to all small businesses that need it right now. So you can reach out to us. We will connect you to professionals that can guide you to all of the things that you're going to need to reopen. The Restaurant Association has put out a great reopening checklist and guide. We've also put one out with guidelines on how you can best communicate to the community. It's really important right now that small businesses think about really getting out far and wide what they're doing, over communicate really everything they're doing. So reach out to your city, reach out to your town. Local First can be a resource and connect you to the right things out there that can assist your business, as there's a lot of different things right now.
I know, Thomas, I was just talking to one of the restaurant owners and they were saying, well, now I got to market myself again. It's just like, it's like they're just starting all over. And now I have to have a marketing plan. I didn't even have to have a marketing plan before. Now I do.
Yeah, it's incredibly different. We're entering a world where people are coming back out of their homes again, and it's going to be very, very different, right? The way that we visit businesses is different. The way that we are going to consume products is going to be different. And so it's important for businesses to get out in front of it. It's important for them to have it on their websites, post it on their social media, share it as much as they possibly can, so that the community knows what they're doing and feels that they can build enough trust to visit and support that business if they're choosing to go purchase something from them.
One last question I just had was, I guess just for anyone who's joining us and listening to this conversation, whether they're feeling, comfortable going up to a restaurant or not, what is the best way that they can support a local restaurant now or that local business?
I'd say for the average consumer, we need to be patient, we need to be respectful, and we need to be adaptive to all of the changes that these businesses are undertaking in order to safely and properly return to business. So plan ahead. Don't bank on all of the conveniences and speed of food being delivered to you or food being made for you that we had traditionally before the pandemic started. We as consumers and we as community members need to remember that these businesses have always been there for us. They've been the ones sponsoring our kids' t-ball teams. They've been the ones donating gift certificates for our nonprofits and charities all the time. It's time for us to show up for them. It's time for us to go the extra mile for them. Call ahead and make sure we know what extra regulations they have, or maybe if you have to make a reservation or wait a little longer. We need to do our due diligence as people in the community to try to step up for these businesses right now.
Steve, the governor is going to be talking today. Is there anything that you would like to see the governor do for restaurants? Is there something that you guys are pushing the governor's office for?
Right now, as I shared with the governor many weeks ago when we first had a pivot to takeout, that there is no playbook that comes with COVID-19, right? Everyone thinks they have the best options, the best ideas, and there's no playbook. And right now, I think we're doing very well. I would just put a punctuation on an exclamation point, on what Thomas just said, because that's where we stand today. I think the governor is going to continue to make his decisions for restaurants and bars as he has leading up to our reopening of dining rooms. And that's all we can ask right now. And we're excited to have restaurants reopen. Justin, I have the privilege to sit on the board with Dick Marriott. And recently Dick said, never forget, we are the industry of happy. And I think that's what Thomas is speaking to as well, that we are the industry of happy. We still celebrate graduations in our restaurants. We still propose to our significant other in a restaurant. And we're still here for you in that way. We're still here for the business deals or those personal celebrations. And we want to encourage people to not forget that. And if you still aren't comfortable coming into our dining room, bring some food into yours. And we'll be there for you however you want us to be.
All right. Well, thank you. We have Steve Chukri here with the Arizona Restaurant Association, Thomas Barr from Local First Arizona. If anybody watching this, if you want more information on these organizations, you can go to our website, abc15.com/townhall. There's information there. And of course, if you have more questions, email us, rebound@abc15.com. We have people going through all of your comments, a team of reporters that are working on all different sorts of angles. So if you have questions that you would like answered, rebound@abc15.com, or you can also go to abc15.com/townhall, and we do have a link there on some of these organizations there to help you out. Thank you guys for coming. I greatly appreciate it. Josh, my coworker there, good information.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it. Have a great day.